So guys, to begin the tutorial of the spring, I want to let you know that I'm going to break this down into 3 parts. One is going to be the grip, how you hold the cards. One is going to be how you actually shoot the cards, and the other is just the catching. So without further ado, let's jump into the tutorial for the card spring. So to start out with the grips, there are 2 different ways to do it. I'm going to teach you the way I do it and then teach you how I think it's normally taught. I'll do how it's normally taught first, which is if you take the deck of cards in your dealer's grip hand, you just hold it. The way you're going to grip it is by putting your index and middle at the top right or top left corner, depending on what is your dominant hand, and your thumb at the opposite corner to that. So if your fingers are up here, index and middle, your thumb is at the other side. You want to make sure that if it's in your right hand, they're at the top right and bottom left. And if it's in your left hand, it's going to be the top left and bottom right. Okay? So what you're going to want to do is put the cards essentially on the tips of your fingers. What I do is with this tip, with this corner of the card and this corner of the card, I put my middle finger, this corner, in the middle of my pad of my finger, and then push down. And then with my thumb, I put this corner in literally the middle pad, like the middle part of the pad of my finger. And instead of trying to wrap it around like this, one tip is if you have any of the fingertips sticking over, these things right here are going to prevent the card from shooting out very well. So it's going to be really hard. You actually want, and I'll show you this up close to the camera, these as close to the tip of the deck as possible. See how little of a space I have between my thumb and that card coming off? Because you are going to want these to lightly come off later. So you don't want to grip it like this, like chunky overneath, above or underneath. That's not going to allow the cards to spring out freely. You actually want to grip with as little of the fingertips as possible. And that's going to get you the smoothest flow of this card spring. So when you've gripped it with the middle here and the thumb here, your index is going to go to the side supporting it, and you're going to bow the cards into the same shape of the arc of your hand. That's important. If you bend it out this way, you're actually doing a dribble. That's something completely different. And you actually just want to push it just enough. You don't have to push it too hard. Just enough pressure to where you see individual spaces created between the cards. And then what you want to do, so we'll move to the actual shooting portion now. So that's the grip. Actually, before we do that, let me show you the other grip. The other grip I do is with the fingers over top. Now it's different here because I use this fleshy part of my finger to apply pressure to stabilize the top of the card. So essentially when you're shooting them, the index and the middle are just holding. The thumb and the direction of the thumb is the only thing doing the shooting with this card spring. Same thing with this grip. I have big hands, so I'm able to put it like this. So depending on where your hands fit, is going to be what your hand size is. Oh my goodness, excuse me, is where you're going to put that corner of the card. So this top corner is going to go in this crevice between your pinky and your ring finger, and depending on how big your hand is how much up the deck you'll be able to place it. I would place it at any of these little notches on your knuckles is where you'd want to hold it. So if your hands are small, you could probably hold it here. If that's as far as you can go across this little notch, and then if you can, go to that notch, and if your hands are big enough, you can go to the bottom line of your fingers. If you can see this, there's some fleshy part of my hand sticking over top of the card here. That's going to be pushing the card in the opposite direction so that they will shoot off your thumb, and that is very important for this move. So the reason why you apply pressure with the fingers here is so that they will shoot off the thumb. So I usually put this corner right in this little crevice here and then lay the line, the top short line, across my fingers like that. And that is the best grip for holding it. So now that you know the grips, we'll move on to the shooting motion. So whether you want to hold them like this and shoot them off the thumb, you can do that. Or if you want to do my grip, that's where I'll be teaching it from here on. I think this grip, if you can hold it like this, gives more control and doesn't make your fingers so tired. So when people first learn it, these 2 fingers get really tired really fast. So this helps build up muscle more in your thumb, and you can do it more often without getting cramps in your hand. So for the shooting motion, what you want to do is hold it like this, like I said before, and at the very, very tip of your thumb, you'll see that there's barely any space. And if I keep pushing my thumb in this direction towards my other fingers, it'll bend the card, and look, they'll start slipping off my hand like that. Now you'll notice that the thumb does this kind of motion naturally as the cards continue going. Watch this. So as you continue to go, your thumb will naturally straighten out and curve outwards like this. It will start doing kind of the worm. I don't even know how I can do that just from so many years of cardistry. But so you press down to shoot, and you can practice with literally your hand right here, because we'll work on the catch later, or onto a table depending on how you're practicing. and literally just push your thumb towards here. You don't have to like crunch them up because you're going to crush your cards. You want to do it with as much pressure as it takes for them to shoot off, but just that much pressure, no more. So you're going to press here. Your thumb is going to press in and push towards your other hand until they start shooting off, and then just retain that amount of pressure and slowly release, and you'll be able to practice this a couple times while you're doing that. So that's kind of the shooting motion of the cards. Some tips, and this is the biggest part of the control that you need to know: wherever your thumb is pointing is where those cards are going to go. So think about your thumb being the arrow that's pointing the cards in the direction they want to shoot. That will continue the line and make sure you retain that pressure while you shoot. So you don't want them to shoot off of this end. Some people do it like this. I think there's less control that way. I think that if you were to shoot them off your thumb, you get more control and a straighter, better sounding even spring. That's something that you can also tell when you do a spring well. Besides this, like that kind of sounds aggressive and sputtery and stuttery. This though sounds fluid and smooth. Now, the other thing with that is, sorry, I'm bumping the camera with my head. When you do this, you want it to be smooth and you want it to be fluid. So don't try to squeeze them like I said before, but also don't be afraid to bend the cards. A tip that works for me is if you noticed this was really bent earlier, just turn the deck over when it gets too bent and you'll be able to straighten out those cards. So if I get them too bent this way, let's say they've got a kind of a bend like that, to get them back, just flip them over, do a nice little spring, and those are pretty evenly bent now. So, and obviously there's just natural wear and tear over time to your cards. But if you guys got that part, then we're ready to move on to the catch. I'll just say one more thing, that these fingers, this pressure here with your index and middle, or with the fleshy parts of your hand, the different notches in your knuckles, just make sure that those are stopping the cards, because you want them to push into that so that the pressure loosens and applies this way for the cards to shoot off of the thumb. So with that last thing being said, the other thing that happens with your fingers is that they are also going to kind of expand. So your hand's going to kind of make a mouth puppet. Don't try to actually do that, because then you'll lose the pressure that you're putting on the cards, but they will kind of naturally open when you spring properly. So look for that. And now on to the catching. So we're going to use your dominant or your not dominant hand, your dealer's grip hand. And the best tip I've got for this is to spread your fingers out as wide as possible and then curl the ends of your fingers up. What you're doing is you're creating a big basket for those cards to land in so they don't leave. Now, one more tip that I would add, and you can practice this doing anything. You can even just drop the cards into the basket in your hand just to practice making sure you catch the deck. And once you get this shooting down, you can practice the shooting on a table or onto your bed or onto a surface where they're not going to get bent up and where you don't have to drop them every time. And when you start practicing and you start getting them to shoot out, put them as close together as possible, because then you won't lose them. A huge tip for the catching, if you can, move your pinky down like this, so almost underneath. So imitate exactly what my hand is doing here. You want the tips to curl up, but you want the pinky to be underneath here, because watch what happens. They're going to sit on this pinky out here. This is almost like I don't even know what to describe it as, but if you get like cash out of a bank or something, you just have the cards sitting out here so they can kind of line up this way. So when I'm shooting, they all fall, and this pinky prevents them from falling down this way onto the floor. So they're kind of getting bent, flip them over, shoot them on. It gets into that basket. For people who have smaller hands, really stretch those fingers out and curl the tips up, and definitely practice being like flat on the ground or flat parallel to the floor, and move your pinky over subtly and slightly so that they can all land. I think that is pretty much it. I would definitely practice the catching a whole bunch of times. Don't spread them out too much. And if you guys are interested, I can show you a tutorial where you kind of move the spring and make it look longer, but it's just an illusion. Hope you guys have enjoyed that tutorial. Thanks for watching so much, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.